Alright, next we got Etherized Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. That's pretty good, I like that. There's not really much, well actually there is, but in this limited there's not much mass evac type cards. That's kind of nice. It's gonna, for uncommon, it's actually really cool, so I like that spell altogether. Agoraphobia. That's the fear of leaving the house, for those of you that don't know. It's a very clever card that way. This guy gets neg 5, neg go. I'm not a big fan of cards that do that kind of stuff. Clinging Anemones. This has got Defender and Evolve. It's another one of those relatively low-cost Evolve cards. I don't like Defenders, though. I'm not a big fan of Walls, so I don't think this is too useful. We got Cloudfin Raptor. Walls with Reach are a little bit different, but that's a whole nother story. This guy's got Flying and Evolve. I think this is really the flagship card for the Evolve mechanic. They made it a common so that you're sure to get one or two, and I really think this is the card that you're supposed to be playing if you're playing an Evolve deck in Limited. We've got Diluvian Primordial. This guy is going to enter the battlefield, and for each opponent, you may cast up to one target instant or sorcery from their graveyard. That's pretty good. That's an interesting one. It's not really my favorite thing. It's a 7-drop 5/5. It does have flying, so it is worth playing, definitely, especially in the format, but I don't know. I mean, that's good. Hopefully you're able to dig something up, but it really depends on what type of opponent you're facing. I mean, against a Gruul, I doubt that there's going to be too much to grab from their graveyard, since a lot of what they're going to be doing is Blood Rush. Enter the Infinite. This card is massively complicated. It's really something that you have to build around. It's definitely not something that's going to be used in Limited at all. I know a lot of people are really excited for it. But it is something that's not useful and limited in the least. Frilled Oculus. This little eyeball buddy over here gets +2/+2 until end of turn, but you can only use it once per turn. Still, that makes him a 3/5. He's basically a 2-drop with a cumulative upkeep of 2 to make him a 3/5. So I actually really like that guy. I think he's very useful. Gridlock, I'm not a huge fan of tapping down non-land permanents. I mean, it's a little bit different. It's pretty good. They do untap during the untap step, so you want to do it, at your opponent's upkeep or something like that, or as soon as you can, as soon as priority gets passed to you, you want to drop this, and the only problem is that you're gonna have to deal with their mana untapping, so you can't really cut off any artifacts at the pass or stuff like that, but you can tap down their creatures. That's kind of nice. It buys you a turn, really, but I'm not a huge fan of that. Hands of Binding. This is a very good Cypher card, I'd have to say, just because it's so cheap. I feel like you're going to get a lot of uses out of it if you're able to get a creature down that has some kind of evasion early on. Hands of Binding with the 1-drop from earlier, that's the 0/1. I think you're going to be able to build that up a little bit more, and this is definitely a reusable ability. It's going to be really great, especially since you're going to tap somebody down, and then when you attack in, you're going to be able to tap down a second creature if you get that damage through, so that's very nice. Incursion Specialist. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, it gets +2/+0 and is unblockable. Really detail-oriented card. I like it. It's going to be a 3 damage if you're casting 2 spells. Otherwise, it's a 1/3 for 2, so it is a solid play no matter what. It's a solid creature. Keymaster Rogue. This is one of those rogues that can block the other rogue we were talking about, but he has no such stipulation. He is unblockable no matter what. When he enters the battlefield, you return a creature you control to its owner's hand, so that is his main drawback. He's also a 4-drop. He's alright. You could get yourself out of some pickles by dropping this guy and picking something up, so he's definitely playable as well. Last Thoughts is way too much mana to draw a card. I'm not a fan of that. Leyline Phantom deals combat damage. You return it to its owner's hand, so I do not like this either, especially since it's 5/5 for 5 with all drawback. Not a huge fan. This card is just good. I'm going to say it's a 2-drop, 2/1 with cumulative upkeep 1, but it has evasion. I'm saying it's good because in this set, a cheap card with evasion is really going to make all the difference, I think, especially coming in at a common slot. I think it's going to be a pretty good card. Mind Eye Drake dies, and target player puts top 5 cards his/her library and his/her graveyard. Not a huge fan of this. It's late game. It's a 2/5. And limited, it's going to be alright because you're only dealing with 40 cards, but I mean, it's hard to kill too. There's not really any reason for them to kill it. It's not too much of a problem for anybody, so I don't really see that being really an issue for anyone. Rapid Hybridization. This is Pongify. Pongify is good. It's a good, solid removal spell for blue. There's nothing wrong with that. Realm Right enters the battlefield. You choose basic land type. Lands you control are the chosen type in addition to their other types. Not super useful for our purposes here, except there are a lot of cards that, you know, do things like gates and things like that. So I mean, it's going to be a different kind of card. I don't see too many uses for it in limited. Sagero's Denizen. Whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield. That's pretty good. There's a suite of these cards for every color, obviously. This one's alright. He's a 3-drop, 2/3. That's a solid body, and he's also got, you know, some tricks. So that's pretty nice. Definitely playable. This Drake friend that we have right here. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter has flying, so he obviously is supposed to be helping out our evolve mechanic decks. He's just a little too late for me. I don't really want to pay 6 for a 4/4. He is going to make everybody else have flying, which is really nice, but it is not a game winner by any means. I don't really even list this guy as super playable, to be honest. We got a counter spell over there. We get to draw a card. It's kind of nice. Simac Flux Mage over here has Evolve. This guy's been getting talked about quite a bit as well. You get to move +1/+1 counters from Flux Mage onto other creatures. So even when the Evolve mechanic stops going off for them, you can have it keep going off for Flux Mage and just keep pushing them on to creatures that have different abilities, like the draw a card one. Even if it gets too fat for some of your other cards to trigger its Evolve mechanic, you'll be able to move those over there. So that card's definitely playable in the format. We got another card that is able to remove 1 or more +1/+1 counters and have a trick. So that's something that works with Simac Flux Mage. This guy's going to gain control of target creature with power less than or equal to the number of +1/+1 counters removed this way. It's a solid card. It's going to be a real way to gum up the machine for your opponent when you play that one. So that's definitely playable as well. Skygames, target creature gains flying until end of turn. I like it. It's not instant speed, obviously, but it is still fun. It's a fun way to get your Cypher cards to hit your opponent. So I think if you are working in a deck that allows for an open slot, that you have like a 40th slot that's questionable, I think throwing this in won't be a bad decision for you. But there are some other cards that I think are going to win you the game, whereas this is just going to kind of help you kind of combo off and get things moving. I'd rather almost have a card that is going to make a very large impact on life totals or on board state. So that is just something to consider. Spell Ruptures, counterspell, where X is greatest power among creatures you control. That's pretty nice because a lot of people tap down for stuff. There's a lot of X spells in the format, so there's a lot of things to consider with leaving mana open. So I really, really like Spell Rupture. It's awesome that it comes in as a common, so that's pretty good. Totally Lost, put target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. Costs way too much, not a huge fan of it. Love the card art, very, very awesome. Harkens back to some obvious other references. Stolen Identity, you put a token on the battlefield, it's a copy of target artifact or creature. Costs a lot, but it's very good. You just want to be sure that you're able to get in for that attack, because for 6 to get 2 tokens that are a copy of a creature, that's awesome. So you want to be sure to play that when it's strategically advantageous. You're going to be able to get through the points of damage that when you cipher it onto a creature. Voidwalk, this is intriguing. You exile target creature and you return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It's going to... It's not super useful is my whole thing as a Cypher card. But it is just, you know, something that you can get a little tricky with. Not too much in limited. I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact. It could be a minor annoyance, and it could, if played perfectly towards the end of the game, it could win your opponent the game just because they are able to exile a card on their first main. But as far as Cypher goes, I don't think it is the best Cypher card or the best mechanic to have on a Cypher card. So I don't really understand that choice from Wizards, but it's a pretty good card. 4-drop to just kind of temporarily get rid of a creature is not great, but if you do it with the right timing, you can win with it. We've got a way to give our creatures +2/+2 and make them unblockable as long as we have a gate. So that's okay. It's definitely not something that I'm gonna put up on a pedestal to try and put in my deck.